So guys, here we are again, and I'm doing another movie roundup video, and what can I say? I said I wouldn't do this again because I know it's a terrible format with which to review movies. You can't get into the details of them as much as you'd want, but that said, I'm really far behind at this point. I have 4 theatrical releases to catch up on, and I really don't think it's going to benefit anyone except the most hardcore watcher of my channel. Rest assured from here on, singular videos, I promise. Although I also promised I'd be doing one very shortly after the last video. But at any rate, let's start chronological order. I have 3 movies to review this time, and that is X-Men First Class, Super 8, and Green Lantern. So, X-Men First Class. How was it? The nice thing about reviewing movies in retrospect is you can actually analyze them how well they did in the box office as well. I think that's rather telling of some movies. But more on that later. X-Men First Class, I really didn't have huge expectations for. Honestly, I was actually kind of thinking it would be pretty mediocre after X-Men 3, which wasn't terrible, I thought, but not particularly great either, and X-Men Origins Wolverine, which was equal parts dumb fun and really annoying. So, take it for what you will. X-Men First Class, going into it, didn't have huge expectations, actually surpassed them quite nicely. That said, I still think there's a lot of problems with the movie. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the duality between Professor Xavier and Magneto. That was a really nicely well-played up plotline. The movie did a really good job of balancing plot lines overall. I thought the kind of separate plot lines of Xavier and the mutants and Magneto, and it all came together rather nicely. And I gotta say, too, I was actually impressed with the villain as well. I wasn't sure who they were going to get. If Magneto is not the villain, you got to think to yourself, okay, I mean, I guess that Magneto and Xavier haven't really seen the full potential of their powers, so that makes them a little less invulnerable. But to be frank, I mean, their powers are pretty extraordinary, so you really got to wonder, who do they get that actually tops them? They did manage it, played actually rather nicely by Kevin Bacon, I think, the villain that is. And his power is very fascinating. I won't spoil it because it's somewhat of a plot reveal in the movie as well. And overall, the conflict between these 3 characters is very, very nice. That said, I do have a little problem with the rest of the characters. The very, very support characters, like the members of the CIA, because the X-Men get involved with the government this time. And that's interesting to see that first involvement there. And I like this alternate history plot line that they've brought up, by the way, just off topic. A lot of people say, oh, you know, it's playing with history or certain times. But you know what? Honestly, it's not playing with history to a point where you're like, really? I mean, it is to an extent, but it plays it well enough that you don't question it as much as you might otherwise. Another movie that just came out recently, Transformers, had somewhat of a problem with this, but getting back to the very, very support characters, like the government agent or whatever, you know what, honestly, they don't need to be very fleshed out. They're mainly comic relief. They're there, that's fine, they do the job, but they had, this is another team-based movie, which I'm glad they're getting back to it. I'm glad Wolverine isn't in this one, but at the same time, I think this team aesthetic kind of played against it there. Because while Magneto and Xavier was done very well, the rest of the team members weren't as fleshed out as they would be. And while they do have their own little arcs, and they're satisfying in themselves, I think the movie could have benefited more if it had just consolidated a lot of these characters into, not necessarily their powers, but I mean just had 1 or 2 of them, consolidated the cumulative runtime of these characters' plot lines into the main plot lines. Really great set design, though. The effects were quite good, I thought, for the most part. They weren't huge budget, but they deserved the job. They did service the movie quite nicely, I thought. Period. Music was really nice, again. So overall, X-Men First Class was a good movie, definitely a step forward in the X-Men franchise. Wow, I can't believe there's 5 of these things already. Damn. Who would have thunk it? Anyway, and before anyone even bothers, it's just a habit of mine to say, I know that that's actually not a word, but regardless. Next up is Super 8, the movie by J.J. Abrams, co-produced by Steven Spielberg here, and honestly, I gotta say, I wasn't too down with Super 8. Super 8 seemed like a movie trying to be a lot more than actually was, and it was all well done. There's very little I can actually point to in the movie and say, I didn't like this, or this wasn't done well. I can't point any fingers, as it were. That said, I'm going to. I just don't think that it really added It didn't have the heft that it wanted to. I really liked all the child actors. Did fantastic jobs, every single one of them, especially the best friend character. And also, I really enjoyed the music. The cinematography was quite nice. The climax ended up pretty cool, I gotta say. And the build-up was good as well. So it baffles me more so than anyone that I think this movie is just... It's good. I think what it comes down to is it's just... With the kind of plot line they had, it didn't play quite as I didn't play quite as I would have liked it to. I know a lot of people kind of like this, I'm going to say E.T., but that's not really a good example. But that kind of more family-friendly plot line that's going on here, I realize this movie can get violent, but at the same time, it sticks to a very well-trodden path that no matter how well it's done, it just really can't seem to overcome the fact that you've seen it many times before, so you really just don't care all that much. And that's as much as I can say for this movie, honestly. Like I said, I mean, the music was quite affecting. I really liked the performances. I thought the effects were well done. Clearly not, again, huge budget, but definitely more consistent than X-Men First Class. And at the same time, it's a good summer movie. It's a fairly intelligent summer movie, which is something you don't see as often as you probably should. And overall, it's enjoyable. It just didn't blow me away. Really not a whole lot to say about that one. Finally on the slate is Green Lantern. Green Lantern, I was looking forward to. I am not a comic aficionado, not by any means whatsoever. I do read some, but not as much that it would really affect my enjoyment of the movie per se. I'm more, at least the time I came from, my childhood interests was I would be exposed to superheroes through cartoons, old TV shows, and, you know, as per the Batman franchise, because that's been going on for quite a while now, a lot of the movies as well. Other than that, I really can't say that I went in with enormous expectations for Green Lantern, precisely because while I liked the plotline, the reviews it was getting were worrisome, to say the least. And I can see where they were coming from. And while I don't think it's as bad as they think it is also not particularly good. And this stems from a scripting problem, more so than anything, I think. The effects were well done for the most part. There was a couple things that they put in the movie that I thought didn't look optimal, but it blended in nice enough that you really don't notice unless you're looking for these kind of things like me that were obsessive about that kind of thing. But otherwise, I think that the problem is this movie has too many plots. Really has too many plots, and specifically some plots don't serve any purpose. They have this one character, Mark Hammond, in the movie, and he has a very fat head. If you've seen him in the trailers, you don't know who I'm talking about. And the other villain really is Parallax. And Parallax is the main villain of the film. He's introduced right off the bat, and he's okay. They do a little better characterization than they do in a similar kind of villain like Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer with Galactus, kind of the evil space cloud in that one. But at the same time, they still really don't do him any favors. He really is kind of boring, all said and done. They really should have just gone for Sinestro right out the gate. And this is one of the other problems. They set this character up to be the villain in the sequel. I really don't think this is a huge surprise. His name is composed of the word sinister, and honestly, I just know from experience what I have read, and frankly, the fact that Mark Strong has a very good performance from him, that this could have been a much better villain than Mark Hammond or Parallax combined, and specifically because he's given some characterization, and I keep saying Mark Hammond, but Hammond gives us some characterization as well. Problem is, his plotline leads to nothing. He has a kind of part of the climax, but not the main climax, and the only real reason he has is to put Earth in danger by drawing Parallax towards it. And it seems like I'm spoiling a few things here, but honestly, take it from me, I'm not. It's really nothing. But suffice to say, honestly, I didn't think Green Lantern was particularly good. I thought it was a little bloated, even though it was only around 2 hours. And while Ryan Reynolds, I actually do like Ryan Reynolds. I think he was likable. He just didn't really have a whole lot to do. And the fact that he basically gives up at the slightest sign of trouble half the time, it seems, really is not an endearing character trait. If you're going to be comic booky, do it in a fun way. Do it like the Marvel movies they've been doing recently. You know what? Thor was not an astounding movie, but that was a movie that I watched. I'm like, I'm having fun. I can relate to this character on a basic level. And you know what? We'll just get into the plot after that. So, otherwise, I suggest you see X-Men First Class, Super 8 if you're into that kind of thing, and Green Lantern if you're really into superhero movies. Otherwise, I would not really go and see it, to be perfectly honest. You could rent it. It's not a terrible movie. I've seen worse. There's probably going to be worse this summer. Oh, this is a pretty good summer. I mean, nothing's like blowing my mind, but there's very little that I've actually watched that I'm like, it's just terrible. But yeah, anyway, next up review I'm going to do right after this, promise, review of Transformers, Dark of the Moon, and I actually have a lot to say about that one, and I hope you stay tuned for that. I'm sorry for this format again, guys, but promise, going to try and shape up. Hope you enjoyed this now anyway.